everyone respects what the Niners have built. And they break it down like they have the best defense. They have the best weapons. They have the best wide receiver tight end combo. They have the best dual threat running back. They have the best offensive minded coach, not named Andy Reid. Like they have so much going for them. And they've had all this since 2019, essentially. And yet they don't have a Super Bowl ring. And when you add all that up and you ask why no ring, people say, well, injuries or luck or this or that. And there's got to be something the Niners can do differently. There's got to be something standing in their way that they can address and not just say, we're going to keep doing the same exact thing every single year and wait for things to go our way. Because a lot has gone their way the last few years. What would you say the last thing standing in their way is?
Wow. Okay.
Is it a flaw in the blueprint? Is it something?
I would say okay, there's a couple things. I really think they lost the Chief game because they did not have DJ Jones. So you got to have
That's a good call.
You got to have your key guys healthy at the end of the year. That's one. Mm-hmm. And they haven't always had. They've missed some key guys. I mean, they didn't have Mosley. I thought Mosley was a key guy. They've kind of run out of players at times. But as far as something they can control, I think it's that Thursday meeting, that Friday meeting when they're sitting out and they're planning in an ideal world. How many touches do we want for these guys? Where do we want to, they got a lot of weapons and they got a lot of choices and they got an array of plays, right? I think there's sometimes there's too much respect for the opponent. Dallas game would be my example there. Sometimes there's not enough respect for the opponent. Philly game at the end of the first half, the aggressiveness. But I would just say, make sure that your money is on the field and that your money is touching the ball. So Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, McCaffrey, that's your money. Make sure they're rested and touching the ball a lot in the biggest games, and take your 5 or 6 key defensive players and make sure they are healthy and rested for the playoffs. And if you gotta play McCaffrey less snaps, play McCaffrey less snaps. If you gotta substitute more and pull Hargrave off the field in the fourth quarter, especially Bosa. Bosa is a difference maker. I don't want to see Bosa in 17-point games in the fourth quarter piling up stats. You're going to pay him his $33 million guaranteed. He's going to get record-setting money. You tell him when he plays, a 10-sack season from Bosa could be more valuable than a 15-sack season from Bosa, because what really matters is when you get in the playoffs, you need a full-run Bosa, not a guy that's been played a ton of snaps and has been chipped a ton. And that's the other reason why I would go get one more defensive end, because if you don't, Bosa's going to take a lot more physical punishment, chip via doubles and chips and that kind of thing. I'll spend some draft capital to go get a Montez Sweat, to go get a Chase Young. I'll spend the cap room to go get Ngakoue. Load up on your defensive line so they can't load up on Nick. Make sure that you get to the playoffs with Bosa. Who's the most important guys on defense are Greenlaw, Warner, Charvarius, Bosa, Hargrave, let's just say. Make sure that those guys come off the field in the fourth quarter when you have a significant lead, and see and plan for the big picture. Plan to be playing in February. That'll be my approach.
Yeah. I like it. To me, though, like, the defense hasn't been the reason that this team hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. When I look at their 2020 was an injury year, but the other years they lost in the Super Bowl, I believe. Put it this way. I think anytime their quarterbacks have a clean pocket, whether it's Jimmy, Trey, Brock, I know for a fact Brock's numbers are off the charts when he has a clean pocket. Off the charts. But pass protection is not an emphasis on this team. Essentially, quarterbacks have to protect themselves. So in the 2019 fourth quarter Super Bowl, the offensive line folded. Chris Jones dominated. And Jimmy Garoppolo was the scapegoat. But the offensive line folded in that game down the stretch. It folded in the fourth quarter against the Rams 2 years later. And it folded immediately against the Eagles. I mean, it folded against the Cowboys too. Like, what was it? 50% pressure rate. It's just that the Niners won with defense, and gave up 12 points. I think pass protection is what's holding them back. They have a great D-line. They're invested everywhere. But their pass protection is like money ball stuff. The only player on the offensive line who's there for pass protection is the left tackle. Everyone else is a run blocker first. So I just think the design of it is all wrong. This is 2023. You got to be able to pass better. It's nice that you have this great running game, but it's not going to deliver you a Super Bowl. You have to have better pass protection. And that's not just your offensive line. That's what you emphasize. That's not calling 7-step drop play action passes against Hassan Reddick with Tyler Croft blocking him. I mean, it's a whole emphasis. It's not there. That's what I think.
Well, and then if you see a team that's cheating, it's like, if there's hitters in baseball that cheat, and what I mean
sit on fastballs.
Well, they're going to be like Edgar Renteria was going to get pounded on a fastball in the World Series, and what did he do? He cheated. He guessed fastball, and he got his hands going early. He got a fastball, and he hit it out for a 3-run shot. Mm-hmm. Don't go to play action if you're going up against a team like Philly that's not honoring your play action fakes. Just find other ways to, don't just be like, hey, we like play action as part of our game. And they're not honoring the play action fakes. Don't do something else beyond play action to create separation and create, chunk yard plays. I mean, it's to me, that's
a good point.
Don't ignore that there are some teams out there that aren't going to honor play action fakes at all. Whether it doesn't matter what the score is, it doesn't matter what the matchup is. That's the way they're going about it.
Isn't that the best way to defend a Kyle Shanahan offense? I mean, we all talk about what makes him so good. Well, the play action passes look just like the runs, and they get people wide open. Only if you honor the play action fakes. If you come in with a defensive mindset, like, look, we'll live with them running the ball, but anytime they want to do a lazy little play action pass, we're going to kill this quarterback. Kill him.
Right. And we'll take our chances. We'll take our chances. And we're not. Yeah. And what you're essentially doing is you're giving the defense an extra second to get to your quarterback. Mm-hmm. That's when you got to hit them with quick hitters and make sure that if they're not going to honor your play action fake, that you find another way.
And that's why I feel like Kyle Shanahan can be in his bag. If he really knows a defensive coordinator, he can exploit him. But did you not know that the Eagles do that? Like, that play call seemed like he thought he was going to slow down that pass rush. You had Debo coming around. It seemed like he thought he was going to confuse that defense, but none of that slowed him down. So it felt like whatever his game plan was, his scouting was, it was off that week. Didn't have the desired effect.
Also, I think we saw it in the way they attacked the draft. It's like not every weapon has to be a receiver. You've got a bevy of guys. Emphasize blocking more on the line of scrimmage at tight end. I think Dwelly's going to have a real hard time making this football team this summer because now you got Latu, now you got Willis. They're both known as blockers. Willis is a strong blocker in space. Latu's a strong blocker with his lower half on the line of scrimmage.
They might have to keep 4 to keep Dwelly around at this point.
Emphasize blocking.
I think they might keep 4 tight ends this year. I just have a feeling that we're going to see more of a 2 tight end offense. We're going to start to see a little bit. Yeah.
It's going to be hard to, though, Grant, because, I mean, they love to keep 10 D linemen, and they drafted some young players in the secondary, so I think they're going to keep 10 DBs. So
if they keep 5 wide receivers, they can keep 4 tight ends.
You got a loaded linebacking core, and you got
keep 5 tight ends, keep 5 wide receivers, though.
You're going to keep 5 wide receivers.
They just re-signed Dwelly.
Three quarterbacks. You're going to have 3 quarterbacks on your active roster. So, yeah, it's going to be tough.
I don't think you can waive Dwelly, though. They just re-signed him. I think you might be able to trade Dwelly. Dwelly's a pro. They would take him in. They would take him in Miami. They would take him in New York. Anyway, I think there might be a market for Dwelly.
Well, you know what's interesting? That to me, I did a little exercise the other day, and I went through the camp roster, and I thought, okay, obviously there's going to be injuries and all kinds of different things that affect things. But I just was going through looking for the 53, and what I got to was there's at least a half dozen players that the 49ers may be too good to cut, but not good enough to make the team. And those are the guys that I'm looking for Lynch and Peters to turn into 2024 day 3 draft choices. And I think, I mentioned Juwan, but Zane Gonzalez, the kicker, could be coveted by some people. Whatever linebacker doesn't make it could be coveted by some people. Javon Kinlaw, if he doesn't make it, he could be coveted. There's a number of guys on this team that Ambry Thomas, if he doesn't make it, You might be able to find a day 3 pick if he plays well. So they're going to have a good competition, but they've got, I would say, 5 or 6 guys that they may be able to swing deals for before the cut down.
I kind of get the feeling this is Kyle Juszczyk's final season on the team. He'll be 33 next year. He'll have no guaranteed money in his contract next year. His cap number will be almost $7.6 million. I have a feeling if he misses a little time, they'll kind of experiment with Braden Willis in his role. And if Braden Willis does well, they might just go with the younger guy. So I'm curious to see what happens with Juszczyk this year. This might be, talk about, this could be it for him and Juwan Jennings. Final year here.
Don't forget about Coletto, too. The one thing about Jack Coletto, he was a mechanical engineering major at Oregon State. So you're talking about a guy who's really, really smart. And that's what they love in their fullback. They've got a dizzying array of formations and pre-snap motions and shifting. And a guy like Coletto's got the mental capacity to digest the entire thing. He's not quite the athlete that Juszczyk is, but I could see a redshirt year for Coletto and some combination of Coletto and Willis replacing Juice next year.